And go. All right. Good morning, guys. This is Canine Freedom interview number 4, and I am with my IACP conference bestie, Heather Rose, right here. And yeah, Heather, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you do, where you are, and what's your business?
Okay. So my name's Heather Rose. I'm also Heather Hamilton, but I'm on Facebook. I'm Heather Rose. So my business is called Project Canine, and we specialize in behavior modification. So what that means is we work with prevention of behavior issues as well as handling behavior issues as the dogs get older. So everything starting from like little puppies and puppy issues all the way up until they're an adult with just basic normal behavior nuisance problems like jumping and barking, pulling on the leash, greetings, dog socialization, things like that, all the way up to more serious issues like anxiety, fear, aggression, separation anxiety, confinement issues, destruction, things like that. So that's kind of what we do training wise. And then I've kind of recently started getting into the trainer coaching as well. So I'm going to be offering workshops across the country with other trainers. Anybody who wants to kind of get involved in that can either ask questions now or message me later or whatever. But it's something new that I'm kind of trying out. I started it in Utah, and it started really well, actually. I didn't even advertise, and I had a full class. So I'm like, okay, cool. I think this will work. So right now I'm in Salt Lake, Utah, but I actually live in a fifth wheel. So I travel across the entire country, and I can train anywhere. I can train from my computer. I can also train in person with the places that I stop at. And anywhere that I go, I can also kind of set up workshops with other trainers. And I can either teach a workshop with them, or I can be hosted and then teach the entire thing myself. So I kind of recently started getting into that. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Right now I'm in Salt Lake, but in a couple weeks I'll actually be up in Idaho City, which is just north of Boise. So, yeah.
Right on. All right. So you heard it here. If you want a dog trainer on the go, just call her, but don't expect like a 2-day delivery like Amazon Prime or
Right.
or DoorDash. She'll take a little bit, and you probably if you want her to get there faster, you'll probably have to pay for her gas. But yeah, no, that's awesome. And Heather's been a good friend of mine. I've met her in conference 2000. What year was it? 18 or 17?
I think it was 18. It might have been 2000. No, it was 2016. Either 2016 or 2017.
No, 17, because I graduated college, and then yeah. Okay. And she ever since then we clicked. We're such good friends now, and when I'm out in Utah doing workshops or something, I'm always trying to catch up with her when I can. She's awesome. And I think this video we're going to talk about just a little bit of some we're going to talk, sorry, I had a brain fart. It's early in the morning, so we're going to talk about aggression cases and what can we do to prevent, what we can do to whether it's out in the home or out in public. We're going to talk a little bit about just balancing out, being a mom and taking care of the dogs, training dogs, and having kids, because moms are a 24-hour job. And shout out to all the hardworking moms out there, especially during this crazy time with COVID. And in the meantime, guys, feel free to just comment below, send us questions on here, let us know if you can hear us, let us know if you got any questions at the top of your head. But otherwise, me and Heather will just have our casual talk, and hope it's educational for you guys. But yeah, I think Heather, I think I wanted to talk about a little bit about dogs with in-home aggression. We were talking, I know you sent me a message yesterday about what to do, but I know a lot of people, I know most of the people I work with, they have dogs that have stranger danger, or they have concluded that growling and barking does not work, and so they jump right into like, okay, I'm gonna bite you because this is how I manipulate you. This is how I can get you out of the house, or this is how I can control the situation. And everyone, as soon as like, and you know how most clients are like calling you after like the third or fifth bite that the dog. It's never like the first time. It's always like,
right.
I feel like it's multiple times before they actually call someone about it. And I always tell my friends, I'm like asking in my head, why didn't you call us like the first time they did? Oh, and there's Heather's kid.
Yes. This is my 1.5-year-old who's kind of a part of everything that I do because I'm a single mom. So I don't have another option to hand him off to somebody. So
so he might be in and out during our episode. So that's totally fine. So we made good accommodations for that and the TV's right there. So
yes, it's our babysitter right now.
But I know a lot of people, especially if it's first time dog owners or seasoned dog owners that don't usually have those kind of haven't really dealt with those issues. It can be hard, and it really depends like whether either this person has people come over once every 6 months or has people coming over like every day. So Heather, I guess we're just to start the conversation off, like what are some things that people with dogs that have aggression out in the home when people come over, what are some things that you would suggest, or what are like the first basic steps that an owner should be doing when having dogs like this?
Yeah. So it's in these cases, it doesn't necessarily like, and we're talking about human aggression, not necessarily dogs in the home fighting, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, with those type of dogs, like no matter where the aggression is coming from, whether you have an overconfident dog that's controlling space, or if you have a fearful dog, which could also control space, when you have people come in, you as the dog owner should be in control of that environment. So instead of, like someone knocks on the door, rings the doorbell, and the dog goes nuts, like the dog is already starting to control that situation. Yep, I'm gonna hit play. There you go. Sorry, episode ended. Basically when you have people come into your house and the dog is loose, you're not controlling their space. So that's one of the biggest things is you don't want them to be free in the house when you have company coming over and your dog has a history of being uncomfortable, whether they've actually landed a bite or not. No, let's go fix something else, not the computer. There you go. Go fix the chair or the floor. That's great. So yeah, basically you want to be in control of your environment. So by controlling this space, you're taking that away from the dog's decision making. So if the doorbell rings, the first thing that I would do with a dog that's nervous is either put them in a crate, get them out of the situation. And this is saying that let's say they've never done training before and they don't have the money to do the training, or they are very in the early stages of doing professional training with their dog. Get them out of the situation. Take that situation out of their control. So by putting them in a room or a crate or something like that, they have the opportunity to kind of calm their mind down. And you can bring them out later, but that initial reaction is so out of control and so triggering for them that they are not thinking, they're just reacting. Like they're not even using their brain. They're not working through all those steps. They're just like, oh God, something's happening. I have to do something about it. So you're disengaging that reaction and putting them in a situation that they're more comfortable with. And this is assuming that the dog is comfortable in a crate. Obviously, if it's not, that's a whole nother discussion. But if they're comfortable in the crate or they're comfortable in the bedroom or something like that, put them in an environment that they know. Once they calm down, if you're at a point in the training, you can bring them out, but bring them out on a leash. And if you have a dog that you're worried about actually landing a bite, put a muzzle on them. And again, assuming that the dog is comfortable wearing a muzzle or wearing some sort of face covering, even if it's just a halty or a head collar of some sort. And that way you have a little bit more control of their mouth. So when they come out in that environment, you're still controlling space by having them on a leash and then not allowing them to approach people. That's not their decision. That's your decision as the owner. Yep. And so you're never letting them just go up and sniff someone or like going up to say hi, because it puts the ball in their court again. And now if that person doesn't react the way the dog wants them to react, it puts them in a position to get bit, and the dog they have to make a decision. Like they go into that, oh crap, something's going to happen. I need to do something about it because my owner's clearly not. So underneath everything, you want to repair that relationship that you have with the dog so that they trust you in these environments. Even if, in the home is even harder than if you're out in public somewhere, because that's their comfortable space. Mm-hmm. So if you're having someone come into your house all the time, or not all the time, whether it's every day or every 6 months that you get a visitor, that's the dog's home too. So having somebody come in is almost like, it's abrasive, it's offensive. And if they're not used to that, if they don't like it, that's something that obviously that needs work. So there needs to be some sort of relationship shift with the owner and the dog in that point. So by controlling space, you kind of keep the dog from making a poor decision and landing a bite, and then helping them calm down. So if they're too worked up, they're not in a teaching mindset. Like you have to calm them down to get them there. Thank you. That's great. You want to go fix something? Go fix the chair.
Oh, man. I feel like you should purposely break stuff to be like, and then you point to him like, oh, look, I broke it. Let's see. Hey, Molly. Hey, Tamara. Hey, Michelle. Hey, Carrie. How's it going, guys? Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, that's a really good point you made with just, a lot of people give dogs too much freedom, like right away. Yeah. And then dogs, unlike us, like when we expect people, it's like, okay, cool, they're not going to invade the house, they're not going to kill us. But for most dogs, when they establish that their family, their person, this is it, and as soon as they see, like, they perceive other dogs, they perceive other people as threats at first, and then you're expecting guests, but the dog doesn't know, like, the dog's not expecting that. So and for some reason we expect that when people come over that the dogs have no problem. Like if we're welcoming them in, and then if we don't do any training, it's like, oh, it's okay, he's a friend, it's okay, and then the dog's just barking his head off. And you're right. Like I tell my clients all the time, your dogs are not thinking about, I'm gonna go bite this person. It's more like, oh my god. Like I tell them that Pennywise is coming through the door, and that's how your dog feels. And like they're reacting because that's what they do. And it's just like the fact that the dog's in the house and the fact that the guest is right at the door, it's sort of like when there's like, it's like that barrier frustration, or like just the fact that the dog is in that context right there, right now. It puts the situation it puts the dog in like that protective kind of state of mind. And then the fact that he sees someone at the door, at the threshold, and he's like, okay, there's someone right here. He's way beyond like the threshold. Yeah. And I need to do something about it. Where it's like, instead of letting the dog do it, it's like we have to do it. We have to show them that we can handle the situation, and so the dogs can trust us to handle that, and to make sure that, okay, this person is not here to kill us or take over our house. Right. And I usually tell people, like, just because of management is important, where we can't have them practice that all the time. Otherwise, that's reinforcing in itself. And the more this dog does it, the more often he's going to do it. And when that happens, then the more the dog does it, the owners are going to start quitting or giving up.
It's a bad cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. So usually, like how Heather was saying, putting them up in a crate. Sometimes I'll just have it where, we have smartphones. Let's be smart and actually use those phones. Like, when you're expecting someone to come over, okay, I'm gonna give you a long ass text saying, okay, my dog has this issue, this is the protocol, or I'm gonna go over the phone. Or I tell people, put print out a piece of paper with the rules, laminate it, put it at the door. And
that's what I recommend for my clients. And it's very, I try and keep it really simple because they never know, like you get solicitors and neighbors and things like that coming over. And I just have them say like, hey, my dog is in training. He has some reactivity issues. Please don't engage my dog. Don't look at him. Don't talk to him. Don't try and pet him. Like, please ignore him entirely. Yeah. And that really does help.
Yeah, it's so important to communicate. Like one time I was living with I was in a house where I had this deal with a dog walker that had her business there, and it was like I had free rent for that house as long as I was taking care of the boarding dogs that they dropped off. But the issue was I have one or two dogs that don't like when people come over unannounced. And so one of her dog walkers just came in, just no text, no announcements. And I just hear a whole gasket, or I just hear a whole barking spree. And then she's just like, and you would think dog walker, because she's a dog handler, she would know that context. Like, okay, if it's a dogs you're walking, you probably have no problem. But if it's someone else's dog that you don't know, then you should probably just knock at the door, wave at the window. But nope, this girl just came right through the backyard, grabbing dogs. And then I have this, well, you probably see him. He's this pit bull abomination dachshund mix that he's super weird looking, but he's super cute too. He's actually a client's dog that I've been fostering, trying to find a home for. But right now he's just my forever foster at the moment. So, But he nipped her, and then she's like, and then she went in, and she told me, this dog nipped me, and I'm like, okay.
Well, yeah.
I like as much as I want to apologize, I was like, no, I don't want to apologize. I was like, because you came in, because if the house was like empty and it was just the dogs, yeah, do whatever you want. Come in with a monster truck and like wear a clown costume. That's totally fine. But the fact I was living there with dogs, and when people need to be aware of that, like people need to be aware that when you have dogs in the home, don't just walk in the house. Because if you just walk in the house and you just assume everything's peachy, you are in for a bite. You're setting yourself up, and you're creating that sense of danger for that dog. And so I'm just like, it's so important when you got to communicate to people, like, okay, let me know when you're coming in. Hey, let me know when you park, so that either I could put the dog up in the bedroom, or I can probably like bring the dog out on leash, and then like I have the dog sit calmly next to me and just interact, hang out outside for a few minutes, and then I'll let the guests in, and then I'll let the dog and then I'll walk the dog with me, following them on the leash. You really have to control how much you're letting them get away with, and you have to really manage the whole situation at the moment. So
yeah, it's definitely something that a lot of people really struggle with, because they're like, oh, it's my dog's house, I shouldn't have to do all these things to control my dog's choices and their responsibilities. They should just know what to do. Like, and that's really unfair to the dog, because they're not humans. They don't understand our human rules. And yet we put them in our households and immediately expect them to just know how to behave. And we put them in challenging situations every single day, and it ends up being the dog's fault when they make a choice. And that's not really the case. Like in the case of, come here, Kel, come eat these. You're in my chair, man. So in the case of your dog walker, he or she expected you to have like all these perfect dogs because you're a dog trainer. And as dog trainers, we end up with the non-perfect dogs. So
we get the leftovers, or we get, like, especially if you're involved in rescue, or like
it's a whole nother thing with the rescue. Like we get, and I can't remember who I was talking to about this. I think it might have been Sarah Baker from Baker's Acres Canine Academy, but we were kind of talking because she has an Australian Shepherd who has really serious anxiety issues when he's not around Sarah. And we were kind of talking about this, where it's like that as trainers, our dogs are the worst dogs for someone else. But for us, they're awesome. And like I had the exact same issue with the Doberman that I had, and he was perfect until I left. And I didn't know that he had like anxiety issues and things like that because I was gone and I didn't live with anyone else at the time. And when my boyfriend moved into my house with me, he's like, did you know that your dog screams like a banshee every time that you walk out the door? And I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I had no idea. And he's like, yeah, he's like dying when you leave. And there's no way I would have known unless I had cameras on him. And, you know, but when I'm handling him, he was wonderful. But when I wasn't around, he's a totally different dog. So, and people think that because we're trainers, our dogs are always going to be perfect. They're still conscious beings. They still make decisions. And that's kind of something that I get asked a lot when I do a training program with someone too, is they ask about a guarantee. And they're like, oh, can you guarantee that these issues are going to be fixed? Absolutely not. No, because your dog's a conscious being. It's like you saying, oh, I'm going to send my kid to school, and you're asking the teacher if you can guarantee that they're going to learn everything that the teacher is teaching and pass the test with an A. No, it's all up to the student. It's all up to that child. It's all up to that person. And it's not all up to the dog. Like, just like it's, you know, like, I guess it's not all up to the kid. That was a bad example, because sometimes there's good teachers and bad teachers, and there's good dog trainers and bad trainers.
Yeah, there's so much factors that you have to consider. And like with dogs, I mean, the reason why everyone thinks our dogs are so amazing because, you know, because we make it look good, or we did enough where it's like, okay, you're not gonna display these behaviors like right now. You can probably do this when we're not in when we're not in front of all these people, or you know, we might let our guard down like 1 second, and then that's when you see it. But when people are like telling me, oh, I want your Shepherd Nova, or I want Charlie, and I'm just like, no, you don't. Like, no, I was like, no, you don't. I was like, you live with her. Like, like for me, when I got Nova and she's about to Malamute, like,
go get more. Go get some yum yums right there.
Like, she's not as high drive, and this is another topic that I was thinking. My other friend, she has a field lab, and he's a butthead too. He's a weird dog, but we were going to talk about like dog trainers and their personal dogs. But like with Nova, you know, sometimes we butt heads, or sometimes it's just like, I know she's hella smart, but when she reacts, whether it's a cat or a dog fighting, she just goes for it. I'm just like, oh, I'm like, I hate, like I love you so much, but those times when you're just like, when you're being a shepherd, I'm just like, God damn you.
Yeah.
I'm like, get your ass over here right now. And I'm just, but you know, it's like I forget myself that they're all individuals too, and I can't program them like a robot. I can't change their USB or something, you know. So
no, they're individuals that do make their own decisions. They have a conscious mind. And okay, so talking about mistakes that our dogs have made. So my one of my dogs, he's a 17-year-old American Bully. Let's see if I can find his kennel here. Oh my gosh, I'm right in the way. Okay, anyway, never mind. He's in the kennel behind me, and I apparently can't get my camera to focus. Anyway, 17-year-old American Bully, and he's pretty perfect across the board for the most part. And he makes mistakes like every other dog does. This morning, I gave my son breakfast. I go in, I'm like getting ready, brushing my teeth, all that kind of stuff. And I come out, my son had given him his entire bowl of food, and he's like, great, and just chowing down and eating my son's breakfast. It's like, do I correct him? I didn't, because it's not his fault. He didn't do anything wrong. He was presented with food and then so he ate it. Like dogs are opportunistic learners. So as long as there's something in it for them, they're going to keep doing that behavior. So something that I talk about a lot with my clients is like reward. So reward, the first thing people think of is food. So they're like, oh, well, that's easy. He did something right. Give him a piece of food. Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. That's very straightforward. But what about the things that aren't as straightforward? So if we go back, we kind of full circle back to talking about the dog that was barking at the door and reactive to people coming into the house. The dog is continuing to react because there's a reward in that for them, because it feels good. So every time a dog is reacting and that adrenaline is released, there's a bunch of dopamine that's released in the brain as well. So it's almost like they're drug addicts every time that they're practicing this behavior. So how do we take away that reward so that it's not as fun anymore? And that's why you put them in a crate. That's why you take them out of the situation, because they want to keep practicing that behavior. So break the pattern, get them out of the situation, calm them down. And then the next time that you bring them out, let's say in 5 minutes, 15 minutes, however long it takes for them to chill, you bring them back out again. And it's a much slower interaction between the person that's now in the house, rather than that abrasive, like doorbell, like somebody's coming. And you open the door and the dog's already in that heightened state. So they go after the person. So, you're breaking that cycle and you're taking away that dopamine release. The adrenaline might still be there, but it's a slow release, slow buildup, and you're not getting that immediate, like that fix. So reward can come in a whole bunch of different, giant spectrum, and the dogs will reward themselves in some of those cases. That's
like there was a snippet up with Michael Ellis, and I saw his Instagram post, and it talked about behavior mod just very slightly that I almost signed up for, but I saw it was hella expensive, even though it wasn't in person. So, but anyway, he said that dogs are basically drug addicts in like their behavior, and it once they start, it becomes hella addicting because of that dopamine rush. And I mean, it's the same thing with people. It's like once you find something that really makes you feel good, you're just like, we're all super greedy. We're just like, oh, I want more, unless you learn to control yourself. Like we can regulate ourselves. We can control it, like, because, we have that monkey brain. We have like, we're a little bit more advanced with the dogs. Some people can. Let's just say most people can, and there's some that can't. But it's like at least we have more of that ratio versus dogs. Dogs, they just go for it, and sometimes we expect too much of the dogs, and then we also think all our dogs are the fluffy golden retriever that can just want to go up to every single person.
Right.
And unfortunately, like I go to different clients and I'll say like, sorry, your Doberman, your Shepherd, your mix, your little dog is not a golden retriever.
But even then, like that's scary to even compare to that breed. Like there's some golden retrievers that I've worked with that have been scary too. And a lot of people get caught up in that, especially with aggressive breeds. So something that I deal with a lot right now, because I live in my fifth wheel and I like to stay at RV parks, and they have breed restrictions. So, and I've fought this on several different occasions, not because my dog is special, but because they specifically write out the breeds that they don't want at the park. And they're things like, pit bulls, American, and then they put pit bull, but comma, American pit bull terrier. So I don't know what pit bulls are once they now said American pit bull terrier as a second breed. And then they're like Staffordshire terriers, German shepherds, chow chows, Akitas, things like that. But my dog is an American bully. So when I apply for the park and I type in my dog's information, because they ask about that, I put American bully, and they were like, oh, what's that? And I'm like, it's an American bully. Like it's an actual breed. And they were like, well, it's a pit bull. I'm like, no, he's not a pit bull. And they were like, well, he's a pit bull type dog. And I'm like, well, then so's a boxer. So are you asking if he's a pit bull type dog, or are you asking if he's an American pit bull terrier? And I've kind of been like, if you don't want any kind of bully mixes or bully breeds or pit bull breeds, you need to be more specific on that. And they were like, well, he's an American bully, which means that he has aggressive tendencies. Okay. Maybe not. I mean, all breeds can, but because that they restrict those breeds, but then in the same park, all have an issue with like a cattle dog who's reacting and just going basically just batshit crazy at the end of the leash because I'm walking my well-behaved dogs and that dog can't hold it together. But yet that dog's allowed in the park. So this is an issue across the board, no matter where you go, whether it's at an RV park or at a campground or at a dog park or at an apartment complex, where people they have those breed stereotypes. And the good breed stereotypes, like the good, well-behaved golden retrievers, can be just as dangerous as an aggressive pit bull, because it can be taken the wrong way.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, you have to
look at your
factor,
show. Watch your show.
Like, there's so many things like genetics. There's things like how much socialization that person that's taking care of the dog does with them. It also depends on like the training that they do.
Right.
Like, because I mean, there was like one time where the golden retrievers were like the #1 dog that had the most number of bites because so many people were getting them. And I don't know if maybe because it was like during that time when Air Bud was premiered, or like some sort of movie thing, something like that. But it's just like, I mean, breed gives you like somewhat of an idea, but it shouldn't define the breed itself, especially if each dog is an individual. So for me, it's like, and I'm pulling this off from like what I learned from Caesar. It's just, it's not always the breed. It's sometimes it's most of the time it can be the person that has that dog.
Well, I know you're going to be interviewing Heather Beck as well. And she has an article called "It's Not the Tool, It's the Fool." And it's a really good way that she describes how it's not about what training tool you're using. It's not about the dog. It's not about the breed. It's about there's always genetics and breeding and things like that come into play. But for the most part, the dog, on how the dog is being trained, it's always the owner. And a lot of times it's improper handling, improper knowledge. Like, they go to the internet and they get Facebook advice or they have a friend that trained their dog. So they're like, what'd you do? I'll do exactly the same thing. And it's not going to work for that dog because it's not the other person's dog. And so she has a really good way of explaining that. And I'm hoping that maybe she'll bring that up when she's talking as well. And she'll probably talk about some aggression too. That's what she specializes in as well.
Well, now that you requested that, I guess I have no choice but to have her mention that. So that's always a good talk. That's always a good thing for clients to hear, just because everyone just either watches YouTube or listens to a friend of theirs, or they don't do much training. Like, literally, I've had clients where I've asked them like, what have you taught your dog? And then they say sit, and then it sounded like they were going to continue on the list, and I'm like, sit, and then they're like, that's it. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right.
Yeah. I've had clients that come in and they have a laundry list of all these obedience commands and dog tricks that they've taught their dog. And I'm like, okay, well, what is your biggest goal with me? And they're like, oh, my dog bites people. Cool. Have you tried using any of those obedience commands when your dog's about to bite someone? And they're like, well, yeah, it doesn't work. Why? Like, why isn't it working? Like, they know it in that situation when there's a treat or when it's at home and there's nothing going on, but out in public, or when someone comes into the house, or if there's another dog down the street or a cat runs across the road, the dog forgets it all. They don't know anything. So
that leaves my question. That there was that one question I wanted to ask you. How important is obedience when it comes to like behaviors like aggression or reactivity? Like, how important is that in your opinion?
I want to say it's not with the way that I train. I know there's other trainers out there that think it's really important, where obedience and behavior are really connected. I actually don't teach very many obedience commands. I don't teach, like, sit kind of comes with what I teach. But like heel and a proper leash heel, or, you know, like a perfect downstay, things like that, I actually don't work on that at all with my clients. I want loose leash walking, and I want the dog to be naturally practicing that. Never in the way that I'm rehabilitating or training a dog is it important that the dog is ahead of them. So they don't need a heel command, because when the leash is on, they should be in that loose leash position. And I don't care which side, left side, right side, it doesn't matter, because I'm training pet dogs. So I'm not training for competition.
Yeah, so, it's America. It's like you freedom of speech, freedom to walk whatever side your dog's on. And and everyone's just like hooked on the left side. Sorry, you keep going. I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, that's okay. There's the obedience commands that I teach, if I have to kind of count them, I could count them on one hand. And that's come. Come is the most important command that I teach. Probably the next one is
Yep.
That's about it. Like, oh, and place. Those are the 3 commands that I use with every single client, no matter what issue they come in for, whether it's a puppy or it's a dog with aggression that's killed another dog. Like, those are the 3 commands I use across the board. And like, those might get changed up a little bit. We might start doing like come here or hey instead of but the command itself, the word, with how I'm teaching my clients, it doesn't matter. It's all about the intention and the energy behind the word that you're saying to your dog. So my personal dogs, I don't teach them any commands. They pick them up. They probably know 300, 400 words. I don't actually know. I've never really counted them. But when I say let's go, I can say pack up. I can say get in the truck. I can say get out of my face. Like, I can say all of these different things, and they know what they mean. Or go away, or like get out of here. Like,
are you telling that to them, or are you telling the kid that?
Those were there before I had my baby, so he's learning the same ones now, though. But,
oh man.
Like a lot of those commands, like I don't sit and teach them what all of these mean. Some of the ones like leave it or drop it, like they do learn drop because of play. Like if I'm playing with them and I'm playing with toys, they do learn drop, because I'm not going to keep playing with them if they don't drop the toy. But it's not something that I set up sessions to teach drop. So it's not like, okay, today we're going to teach the drop it command, and then we're going to practice for 20 minutes, and this is how I'm going to do it. Like, it's never like that. It's just kind of like, let's go out and play, throw a ball around or play with the Frisbee. And in that session, I'll just be like, okay, hey, we're going to learn this because you suck at giving me the toy back. So whatever the dog needs as to function in their household, we work on those things as we start going. So if the client is really hung up on the dog needs to know down and drop it and leave it and come and kennel and all of these specific commands, and they can't get past that, I will teach them how to do it. But it's one of those things where, like, again, dogs are opportunistic learners. So what are you giving them that's going to cause them to want to learn what that word means? Mm-hmm. So, you know, like get up in the truck, like jump up in the truck. Like why is that important? Like what do they get out of it? Well, they get to go somewhere. A lot of dogs like car rides, so they get to get some reward out of it. Get out of my face. What is the reward for that? Like if you teach them like go, like I'm like, where's my hand? This is my hand signal to like get out of my face. And so I'll tell them like, just go. And they're like, okay. And they just turn around and walk away. Like, why would they do that if there isn't a reward in it for them? I don't give them a treat for that. I don't tell them good job. It's more the overall relationship with them and I get better over time. So if they start, like if they start listening, they're like, oh, okay, if I listen, then I get more walks, I get more play, I get more out of the crate time, I get more rides, I get to go more places. So it's a long-term reward but food is a short-term reward. It's like that instant gratification. Whereas a relationship where the relationship gets better over time, they get to go do more things. With my clients, I'll sometimes compare it to like a teenager that's going to Disneyland. So let's say they know they're going to Disneyland for Christmas. So they have, when does school start? August. So August to December to have good behavior. If they skip school and they get caught doing a bunch of things they shouldn't, they're sneaking out, they wreck their car because they were driving stupid or something like that, and they get punished a lot along the way from now until Disneyland, they're most likely not going to go to Disneyland. Why would you take them to Disneyland if they're not behaving in school?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And then, let me see. I had a thought. What was the thought? Oh God, not.
I talked too long. You lost it.
I guess so. I was just like thinking. I was thinking so hard that I slipped and I lost the thought. But anyway, keep going, and then like I'm sure it'll come up to you. Let me just watch. Let me see who's watching. So let's see.
Okay.
I love Charlie. Hey Jason. Hey Keaton. Let's see. Jason Cohen's watching, and then there's a couple of high school friends of mine, and then there's hey Hannah, how's it going? Go ahead, just keep going. I'm sure it'll get back to me like in like a minute or something.
Okay. I'm trying to think where I was at. I think that was pretty much done with.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just like when, and I still haven't grasped the thought, but I'm just gonna keep talking and it'll probably get back to me on this. But it's like, yeah, most likely, yeah, if your kid's just acting out like really bad and you're still taking him to Disneyland, then what is the dog? Oops, wow, sorry, not the dog, the kid. What's the kid learning? But right. That was it. I was thinking about just like you could use everything, like almost anything for like reinforcement, like whether you bring the dog's leash out and then the dog gets too excited. Nope, I'm going to put the leash away. When the dog is calm, okay, I'm going to reward you when you're calm. Like when you're calm, when you're in this state of mind, this is when the leash comes. This is how, because dogs are so pattern based, it's like, okay, leash means door means goes outside. And it's like, same thing with, and it also too, just relationship has boundaries. It's like, if I could, like, you don't see like romance dramas or like shows where they pay $1 every time they tell the husband or boyfriend to go away. They're like, go away, here's $1, good job. It's like there has to be things that's very clear, that's just like, get out of my space, hey, don't touch the stove when it's hot, or hey, don't, like, everything has every relationship has boundaries. They have their set of rules, and it's like just like that, like when dogs come into my space, I'm like, hey, no go. Like, I don't want that. I don't want that overexcitedness now. And if you do go back and give me distance, then it's like, okay, now you can come over. This is much better. And then reward that state of mind. It's really just letting them know what you prefer and what you don't prefer, but you have to be patient too, just teaching it. And like for me, I tell my clients, because by the time when it happens, they're tired, they're hungry, they're cranky, they're like, oh, like, hey, off or down, or like, stop it. And I'm like, okay, instead of you instead of you waiting for your dog to jump on you or like get in your face and then you're tired and all that, like just practice where the dog's coming up and then you're teaching them and like when you're in a better state of mind, because if you're frustrated, if you're tired, you're not gonna be training the dog effectively versus just wait that one moment out of the whole day where the dog does it and then you're tired and you don't really want to put up with it. But that's important, because if your dog can't really listen to you at home or can't listen to you in general about the rules, then there's no way like when people come over and the dog's gonna listen to you when that happens. Right. So yeah, like you really have to manage what your dog is practicing, and you really need to cap and manage what your dog is not practicing, because again, the more they do it and it was their decision, the more likely it's reinforcing for them. And it's super important that we not make our dogs addicts about barking or biting people. But yeah, going back to that, like, so when you do have people come over, like what are some protocols that we could be doing, like once people are in the home? I know you did mention this to me like yesterday, but why don't we go ahead and just tell the public how you do
it? So one of the things that I do with my own dogs, and they're not aggressive, but something that's really easy to do, regardless of where their issues are, is controlling their space and controlling their decisions. And in controlling those things over time, you start to control the mind. So for a dog that's already trained, like my dogs or somebody who's gone through a training course, you can teach them the place command. And basically, you're just teaching them to be on a space. You're not allowed to get off this space until I come and get you. And basically, they're not released until their mind is calmed down. So, whoa, sliding off. They're not released until they're calmed down. So if you have a dog that has aggression, obviously you're not just going to like point and say, go get on your bed. I would have them on a leash. I'd be standing next to them and then talking to my guests that way. And if my dog is growling or anything like that, I wouldn't necessarily correct it, because I would want a growl more than I want a unprovoked or a bite without warning. So if my dog is sitting on place, staring at my guest, growling, I might turn them around and just be like, you know what? Look at me instead. And I'm not popping them on the leash. I'm not like, hey, knock it off. It's more just getting their mind to focus on something else. And it's stopping that adrenaline, stopping that dopamine, because all you want to do is just redirect them and have them do the work. So if you make them do more of the work themselves rather than you having to like do all this fancy stuff on the leash and pop and treat and talk and command and like more, all you're doing is just kind of feeding more stimulation to that already overstimulated dog. So I slow down. Like if I notice my dog is super wound, or if it's reacting to something, I slow it down and I turn it away from that stimulus. Look at me for now until you can handle it. And then if he starts doing like quick glances and then looking back up at me again, awesome, that's great. Now he can control it a little bit more. So I might turn him around again and give him another chance now that he's calmed down and be like, all right, you can look at this person that you think is so scary. Oh, look, nothing happened. And then once the dog is, I like to see an open mouth or at least a relaxed face if I don't get a full open mouth. Once I see that, I'm putting the dog in the crate. So now I've worked them to the point of relaxation and then put them in the crate. And now I might try it again the next day or the next time somebody comes over. And every time it's going to get a little bit easier. So that's something that people can do, that they don't need an entire training course to start doing that. It would be helpful to have a trainer point out the subtle signs of what their dog is doing so that they can catch it before a reaction.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, like once the dog is reacting, you're too late. You've missed all those cues leading up to that point. And sometimes they're really subtle. Sometimes it's just like the dog could be looking down and then they give a little eye flick and they look back down again. It might be something as subtle as that.
Oh yeah, no, it's like the littlest things, like everything's not verbal like humans. It's just like from the littlest lip lick, like little lip lick, or when the mouth is closed. And for like the dog owners that don't know what the significance is that when they close their mouths, they're tense or they're not comfortable. When they lip lick, they are thinking about something. They're thinking about what they're going to be doing. And so if like with Heather, like when we talk about open mouth, that just gives your dog, it gives you that signal that he's starting to calm down, he's starting to relax a little bit. Unless your dog's like really, his mouth is like really panting hard and it's like wide, like super wide, then your dog's like hella anxious, or just
like our bloodhounds and mastiffs that have open mouths all the time.
Yeah. And then like you have to look at like the eye squinting, just like if it's soft or hard eyes, see where your dog's ears are at, whether they're pointing towards the person or they're really pulled back. You want a dog that's ears are like just relaxed, just either pulled back a little but not all the way. And you don't want a dog that's always alert the whole time. You also just have to watch the tail, because most people assume the dog's wagging his tail, that means he's happy. No, it does not mean he's happy. It means that your dog is around. Well, there's certain tail wags that does significant. I can't English.
Signify
that. But most of the time is like when the dog's like super aroused and super reactive, their tails are just like, I like to think of them as like really fluffy rattlesnakes, where that tail is going, they're agitated. You can't get them back. And a good point that Heather pointed out was, you can't always be correcting the growling, those first behaviors that the dog is doing. Otherwise, the dog is just gonna skip right into the more intense part, because you did not allow that dog to express that behavior, or like you did not allow the dog to go that little route.
Yeah. There's I wish I could get every single video of this dog that I'm working with right now. We're doing private lessons with him. He's a white German Shepherd. He did training with a different training kennel, and the dog came out with amazing obedience, amazing e-collar training, amazing leash work. Like obedience-wise, this dog is awesome. But he wants to kill every single dog he sees, even if they're like 500 feet away. So they were recommended to me by another trainer. So like they started with one kennel and then they contacted another trainer, and she's like, I don't really do that. I'm going to recommend Heather. So down the grapevine he goes, and he contacted me. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you go and check how he's doing? I just gotta go use the bathroom real quick, so it might be a good opportunity to check on him real quick. So,
he's talking to me. He's just singing, but
I
can keep talking if you're okay.
Yeah, go ahead and keep talking, and I will run to the bathroom as fast as I can and run down as fast as I can. So excuse me, guys. A little potty issue.
Yeah, so basically this dog has impeccable leash training, off-leash training, and obedience, except for if there's another dog around and then he wants to kill everyone. So she contacted me, and then basically, or he contacted me, and once we started training, the first lesson, I didn't have any other dogs. We met at a park. There's no other dogs around. And I'm like, okay, let's just see kind of where he's at. And so I handled him. I took him away from his owner, and I noticed the dog had some anxiety from being away from his owner. And he was very responsive to the e-collar. But then I took the e-collar off, and then he's like, cool, I don't know anything. So what that told me is the entire time the other trainer did all of the tools. They did e-collar, they did obedience, they did verbal, and they probably used maybe some food, I'm not sure, but they did all of the work to make him look really nice, but they never worked on his mind. They never worked on him, on the decision making, and they never worked on the relationship that the dog had with the handler. So we had our second session a couple days ago, and I noticed this in the first session too, but in the second session, we had some interactions with about maybe 10 or 15 different dogs at the park. And I noticed the dog's whole body is incredible at screaming what he's thinking. So the dog's ears are like satellite dishes. Move my camera up. So they were like straight up, and then one of them would point toward the owner and the other one would point out to the other dog. Like they were literally like just satellite dishes. And when he was too focused, they were both like, the ear canals were both pointed right at whatever it was that he wanted. So I pointed that out to the owner, and I'm like, we really need to pay attention to the position of his ears. So I'm like, when you're walking him, if you notice that there's another dog coming, watch his ears. And as soon as they both go forward, I want you to call him and turn around and just like, Nimbus, come on, let's go. And just like happy-go-lucky Nimbus. Yeah.
I love that name.
But basically once we started doing that, the dog would start looking towards the owner. It's nap time. Okay, bud. Give me 5 more minutes. Let's see if we can get your show to play a little bit more. Look. So once we started doing that, I started noticing after about 2 or 3 different dogs, the Nimbus was looking at the other dog and then looking up at the owner, getting ready to turn to follow him. And this owner is also impeccable at handling. Like, he's wonderful. So the training is happening just really fast. Like, we've only had 2 lessons. By the end of that second lesson, the dog was able to place about 6 feet away from another dog that was on the playground. Because I have to have him with me for my lessons. So I stick him on the playground, see if there's other kids, and other kids will play with him. And then I can focus on him. And then just kind of check on him every once in a while. Well, all the other kids left, and there was only one little baby with their mom. And then mom was pushing the baby on the swing, and then she had like a little lab puppy that was just like on a leash, out of control, and triggering Nimbus like crazy. So I'm like, cool, let's work about 10 feet away from this little dog and just keep working him until he was calm. He was finally able to like sit in place and be calm while this puppy was like just kind of going nuts. So, and the guy was just like, right from the get-go, the owner wanted to correct him. So he's just like, hey, and I was like, let's not jump to that. And he's like, well, that's what the other trainer said that I should be doing. And I'm like, and I understand why they would. It's poor behavior, so you want to correct it. But sometimes the correction sends the dog into a frenzy. Over here, hand over here, frenzy. And that's exactly what was happening. So every time that he was correcting Nimbus, he went more crazy and was, wow. Yeah, just like that. He's growling. I don't know if you can hear that or not.
I can hear everything.
Way to go, bud. Just nice growls.
Yeah, I mean, when you well, you go ahead, keep going with your story. There's one dog I do want to talk about that I am having a hard time with, or having a hard time figuring this dog out. But yeah, when you correct dogs, it's just like pouring more gasoline to the fire. It's just not good unless you really know how to.
Unless they know
how to do it.
I think it's not fair to correct the dog unless they know what they're doing. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you. I had a delay on my end.
No, you're totally fine. It's just not good unless it's good timing, or unless it's like I feel like, and this is a dog I had. This is a 7-year-old Labradoodle that I had to work with, and it was. She's pretty tough because she was basically stuck in the backyard and wasn't socialized at all. And this awesome owner had had her, and she's fine with the dogs that she lives with, but the minute she like sees another dog on leash, you know, she's this big 80-pound or 75-pound Labradoodle, and she's just hard to handle. And the one way I was able to really get her out of that state of mind was a leash pop, and like it got her to not focus on the dog, but I found that she still was thinking about her, like she was super anxious. So
yeah,
like if you had a dog just having a dog, like I wouldn't resort to the correction unless like right now it's like I found that was like one of the things that I can get her off the mind, because like when she's out, you know, food, she didn't really care about food as much, and she was just like looking back and forth and just super anxious. And like I found it like it got her to not focus on it, but it didn't help with that state of mind. Like it still was just like sporadic. So
right.
when you do use a correction, you should probably talk with the trainer. Like I wouldn't have you if you're a dog owner, you have a dog like this, I wouldn't just jump into correcting the behavior, like, you know, whoosh, make the dog fly with the leash.
Start a reaction. So when you have a dog that's high, like that high strung and that high anxiety with that much energy, like you start correcting them, they're going to get frustrated and they might start redirecting on you. That's actually something that that Nimbus, the white German Shepherd, does to his owner, which I actually got to see that on the second lesson. Is he corrected him before I was just like, don't do that. And he corrected him and he jumped at the leash and tried to bite the owner's hand. And then a different time, I was checking on him and I came back from the playground and he was like right in his dog's face telling him no, because there was a dog behind him. And I'm like, whoa, he's going to bite you right in the face. And I was like, don't ever get in your dog's face, especially when there's like another dog. And I was like, I know you want to be like, get in his face. Be like, no, buddy, don't do that. But you're invading his space, causing more pressure on the situation. And that's what happens when you have, yeah, good job. He's helping. Yeah, you know how to train dogs too, huh? But once you start adding more pressure on the situation, whether that's a leash pop or a verbal correction or whatever it is, you can actually start creating more problems in the long run. So something that I would do with a dog like what you're working with is there's two different approaches I would try, and it depends on the dog. The first one is all about just patience, waiting the dog out. So they typically get more frustrated at first, but then they start to work through it Are you all done? Okay, well, you can get down then. Go play in your toy box. Look at all your toys. There's like a million toys over there.
Yeah, I think I just noticed it's an hour, and I know you have to put them for nap time. So hopefully we can just finish this up with just giving me some suggestions with that dog, and a little bit we'll wrap things up with in-home aggression with people, and then we'll get his nap soon. And for those watching, thank you for being so patient about it. Worst case scenario, we can just do part 2 with Heather, just to
and I'm fine with that too. Yeah, so there's the first time, or like the first suggestion would be to try and wait him out. So Heather Beck has her 5-step program. The first step is basically applying pressure up and releasing whenever the dog, you start to feel them calm down. So I would start with that and just kind of like teach him what the pressure means and how to release the pressure himself. So it's just basic slip lead pressure. So get a slip lead on the dog, apply pressure up, wait him out until you get some sort of submissive position, and then release the pressure. And a submissive position is like sitting or laying down, or even, it took a long time for me to learn this third one, but they can be standing while you have a submissive posture also, where you just feel their body kind of relax a little bit. So when you start to kind of feel that release just a little bit, release all the pressure. And then if they start to amp up again, apply that pressure up again. And basically you're teaching them, like, it doesn't have to be pressure on all the time. It doesn't have to be a fight. So you're teaching them that if they feel that pressure and they let it go, then everything's a little bit easier. And you can start to build on that foundation over time. The problem with working with high-strung dogs like that is it typically gets worse before it gets better, unless you're offering them another different type of reward, like food or eye contact or praise or something like that. And I typically don't in that when I'm using that tool, because it can distract them from what they're learning and then it can take longer. So a different approach, which I actually learned on a reactive pit bull a long time ago, where the dog was just like way high strung, not aggressive, but every single amount of pressure that was applied on the dog, she was sent into a frenzy, biting at the leash, like scream barking, and then jumping at every angle on the leash, trying to get whatever way that she could to do whatever she wanted. Like, her mind was just so unfocused. So I'm like, okay, pressure up isn't working. It's just going to cause me to get bit. So what I did was, I'm like, cool, dog has a muzzle on. You want to play? Let's play. So I just started. Do you know how to do Mark Goldberg's Follow Me?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
I think you showed me. I think you showed me a video of it once.
Yeah, it's basically just back and forth on the leash. You hold the end of the leash, like put the loop on your thumb, grab it, hold it with both hands, and I put my hands on my stomach, and that way I'm not tempted to grab the leash all the time. And this is the same advice I give my clients. But you hold the leash with both hands just on the loop end of the leash, and then you just let your dog do whatever it does, whether it's forward, backward, side to side, whatever. As soon as the dog passes you, call them, turn around, and you change directions. So there's no correction. And if they keep going, they're getting that leash pressure, that correction. Whether I don't use flat collars for this because it can kind of hurt when they or if they're going full speed. So I would use like a slip lead, a martingale, a choke chain, and I don't even really love choke chains that much, or a prong collar. I don't love choke chains for this particular exercise because it can be a little harsh. So I want it to be just enough that they stop. So they feel that pressure and then they're like, oh, that's uncomfortable. And then they turn around and you're gone. So they're like, what? Where did you go? And then they start running back at you. If they pass you again, turn around, call them again. You're just holding the loop end of the leash. And this could be really fast when you're working with dogs like your dog or like this pit bull that I was working with, where it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like you have barely enough time to change directions before they're almost at the end of the leash again. So you can get kind of dizzy doing it, but it only takes a couple minutes. So it's maybe 2 to 5 minutes tops where you're wearing them out physically. And you're working so fast that you're matching that high anxiety state that they're in. So they're like, oh, I love this. And they're getting that stimulus, but in an incredibly structured way. So you wear them out in 5 minutes. And then by the time that they've kind of figured out what you're doing, they're walking with you, looking up at you in a perfect heel on 10 feet of leash. Like, and it only took a few minutes of work. So once you get that where they're looking up and they're like, I got this, I crate them. And then I try it again the next day. And the next day they either have it entirely or it might take 2 or 3 days for them to get it. But it's a fairly fast-paced exercise for dogs that their energy level is like up here. And whether their actual energy level is up there or their anxiety level is up there, like either way, you're functioning at the level that they're at. And then they appreciate that. They're like, you feel me, you got this, like, you know where I'm at. And then you kind of bond a little bit in that session so that the next time you do it, they're like, oh, are we playing that game again? And it's slower. Hey, wow. Let go. Let go. I know. Come here. Look. Look at all the people. Say hi.
Yeah, I think it's important because I think because emotion emotion is always temporary, so just waiting it out and just working through the emotion, and eventually they're gonna get tired from expressing that, and they're gonna have to shift to a different paradigm. And I mean, having an anxious dog can be just as hard, just because there's just so. And that was the thing I was struggling with as Doodle, was just like, we're getting him to stop, but I wasn't satisfied that the dog was not calm, or the dog was not in a peaceful state of mind. So that's the part I wanted to work on. And then those exercises that you're doing, are you having dogs are you at a park, or are you like out in front of the house? Or are you at a park where there's no dogs right now, if you were to start them off like that?
My situation right now is different than how I've done the last 11 years. But before, so I've lived in a house that I used a cul-de-sac. I've used an open park. My last house, I had a pretty giant property, and so I used my own space, just my property. Now I can go. I kind of meet my clients at parks, and I don't like to work where there's no distractions, because that's not real life. So I like there to be normal daily distractions. So if I go to a park and there's other people walking their dogs and kids playing at the playground, and maybe like a picnic, or like somebody playing a guitar or something like that, that's pretty normal. So all of those things, I like having those day-to-day functional distractions. Now, I wouldn't do this the first time at the farmer's market or during a soccer game. Like, that's a little bit too much.
Yeah, no, like, you gotta start your clients easy, and then get them to get successful, and then you slowly work your way up, and you know, get them to where they can do it like later on. Let's see, this there's this question right now saying, are you doing this with a long leash? I think he's asking with maybe the Mark Goldberg thing, the follow me. Is it the long lead, or the 6 foot?
I like to use the long leash for this, because it gives the dog more freedom. And it gives them, like, it's easier to do it on a longer leash. And I actually like to start all of my exercises on a long leash, because I want the dog to choose to do it with me, rather than on a 6 foot leash, where you're taking away the ability for them to get away from me. And whether that's, anxiety or play or whatever it is that they want to get away from me, but I like them having the opportunity to choose to be next to me. You can do this on a 6 foot leash. Let's say if you're taking your dog out on a walk and it starts amping up because it sees a cat or another dog, or if it's people reactive or something like that, you can jump into this exercise on a 6 foot leash, but it's a lot faster. It's a lot, your turns are going to be a lot quicker. But on a 20 foot leash, you have more forgiveness too, because you have all of that space, that whole 20 feet, to kind of get away from them, and then have them come back to you. So, sorry, his show stopped, so I'm multitasking. So there you go. There you go. Look, I started it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So for the example that I just used, I would use a 20 foot leash for the dog that you're working with.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Maybe later on you could send me a YouTube or message me like a video of doing that Mark Goldberg thing, just so I can have the form right, so then I could show them, because I have like 2 more lessons, but what, with this dog I probably will just meet them on just to experiment with them, and they'll probably enjoy that. They'll appreciate me. Because the dogs, they're like pretty happy because of where the dog is right now, but because it was like, they were walking the dog at night, and then this Chihuahua like ran towards them because their other dog got off leash, and it chased the Chihuahua towards the Doodle, and like the Doodle punctured that dog. But funny enough, the Chihuahua was fat enough where they glued the skin, and it wasn't like terrible. But it was just like, I didn't get that sense of like, cool, like this is mission accomplished. I still felt like they called me after the dog went after the Chihuahua, but like I got to stop the behavior, but I still haven't stopped like the state of mind and the emotion. So that's the part I wanted to brainstorm a little bit about. But okay, while the kids is occupied, let me give my input about what I would do for dogs that have aggression in the homes, and then we'll have Heather do a quick tip on mom and dogs and what or some what just before we put them up for a nap time. So the way I would do it is, I might probably get the dog physically tired before before people coming over, just whether it's a walk or maybe play ball or something, just to make it easier on them. And when you have smartphones, just text the owner with the dog that you're there. And then once you're there, okay, we can put the dog up for the crate to rest. And then I'll let people come in to sit on the couch or table, just get settled in, because if you're trying to have the dog on leash with you when people are settling down, there's too much movement, your dog's in that intense state of mind. Don't put yourself in that stressful situation. Just put the dog up and let your guests settle. And then once everyone settles and then your dog's in a better state of mind after it knows that people are there, that's when I'm going to have the dog on the leash. And yeah, definitely on muzzle if you don't trust your dog, or you want to make sure that your dog is a safe dog. A muzzle dog is always safe. And I'll work on play. So I'll have a bed. I'll sit in the corner with the dog bed right next to me, and I'm gonna restrict how much movement that I have with this dog. And oh, did I lose Heather? Yes, I lost Heather.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, my internet connection went out for a second, but I missed what you were talking about, but I'm back.
So basically, I was just talking about we exercise. I exercise the dog, get some of the energy out before people come over, and obviously just have that communication when your guests arrive. I just have the dog. I have them put up the dog, and I let the guest in, and just let them get settled, like in the living room or in the kitchen or in the dining room table. And once the dogs calm down, that's when I bring the dog down on a leash. And I was just talking to them about how just have a muzzle just in case, because a muzzle dog is always a safe dog. And wherever you're going, you have the dog follow you. And like if you're sitting in the corner, like have the dog bed right next to you, you can use that as a place. Or like even if you laminated a sign that says, human free zone, this is my dog's place, don't approach or don't bother my dog when he's at place. And I've also just incorporate where, I have guests maybe carry some treats where they can just toss it towards the dog and not like give the dog by hand, because, I wanted where the dog associates, oh, this person's dropping treats, and it's like a leaky toddler, but it's a leaky adult where he's dropping food, and just creating that. I also want the dog to use their nose in a way, just being curious from far away, where and building association with other people. And if I find the dog is getting too worked up, or the dog wants a break from my guest, I'll put them up in their crate. I'll give them a bully stick, and when they're ready, I'm gonna bring them back out, because if I get tired of people, or if I have a certain threshold with people, I'm sure the dogs do as well. So I want to let the dog know, if you're feeling like this is too much, I'm gonna put you up, or I'm gonna bring you somewhere to get a break from these people. And when you're ready, I'll bring you back out again. And I just want the dog to be okay with the presence of everybody and just be calm before I have them go up and greet people. Or, if they're capable of greeting people later on, cool. But if not, then I just want you okay with the presence of everybody, and not feel like you are paranoid or these people are going to eat you in that sense. And it's hard for some people to hear that, just because they want their dog to just greet people, and like everyone wants it where it's like, when can I not do this with my dog?
Right.
Just let the dog be okay with people in general when they come over. And I tell people, it's like, well, you really can't, because your dog, if one person make a mistake, or the dog or someone new comes in and just pets your dog right away, that dog is going to be like, oh, it's going to assume that he broke the rule, and it's that inconsistency that is what really makes your training go back a step. So it's like you can tell, you really have to see, it really depends on the dog. Like if it's people he's seen all the time and he's used to them, then sure. But if it's new people that just come in all the time, then you really can relax with that dog. And you really have to find that structure. And you really have to have that protocol every time it's over for now until you start seeing some progress with the dog. And so like, I don't know what your thoughts are with dogs. Do they eventually relax? Do they eventually let up, or is it always like a constant? Is it always 24/7 management, or can they ever relax with those kind of dogs?
It really depends on the dog, in my experience. Like, I want to say the majority of them can start to, especially if you have them on an e-collar. The e-collar is like your invisible leash in the long term. So some of them might be able to totally be off leash and with people in the house and things like that, where there's very little continued management, where you have to start them in the crate and then bring them out. But even my dogs, sometimes I don't want to deal with this sometimes. So they're very well behaved, but at the same time, like they're still dogs. So I still have to manage them at least a little bit. And sometimes I'm just like, you know what, I'm just going to crate them. And that's fine to do that sometimes. Other times it's, if you've had a lot of change in your environment, it can sometimes be triggering to them just because they now don't know what to expect. So you might have to backslide a little bit. And like I said, even with my personal dogs, sometimes I have to do that. No, buddy, leave that alone. Sometimes I have to do that and get them back on a leash for a little while, just because they are, the environment's changing, or I haven't worked them in a little while. Like the last month for me, I've been in and out of town. And so my dogs have been kind of shuffled around with family and friends. They come back to my house, and my little one thinks it's okay to bark at the door excessively when she hears like people outside. Living in an RV park and having a child, all the kids that live in the RV park come over and want to play with him all the time. So my door, I'm constantly like, I have people knocking on right now wanting to play with him. And I'm just, they're all like, I have like 7 kids right outside my window right now, all like wanting to play with my son. And that's something that's like my daily life now. So for her to bark excessively every time we get a knock at the door, or every time she sees a person in the window, it's way backsliding from where we were before. And that's not her fault. She's been in a different environment for the last month. So we kind of have to start over with that. So sometimes it's kind of like, up and down. For the most part, I want to say that most dogs come off of some form of management, and then it's very little for the rest of their life. But that doesn't mean that, there aren't dogs that need constant management for their whole life. Like I have one of those as well. And I don't have an issue with people. I have an issue with other dogs. And she's lived with other dogs with my dogs for 9 years. And as she's gotten older, she's 13 now, she has started to have an issue where instead of just little scuffles or even a growl or a, hey, I don't want to do that, if a dog does something that she doesn't like, she just goes right into a full-on fight. And unfortunately, she has the type of temperament that she'll kill another dog. So she lives on a muzzle 24/7 all the time. She is never left out with the other dogs without supervision. She wears an e-collar every single time she's out with the other dogs. If she's out on a walk, she's on her prong collar, her e-collar, and her muzzle, because she needs all of that just in case. And 99% of the time, nothing will happen. Like, she coexists with dogs. She has for 9 years. But when that one fight happens, it can be really bad. So she is on a constant form of management. And even now, she actually doesn't live with me anymore because I had a baby, and I don't want him around that, and have him somehow get involved in that. So we were faced with the decision on, what do I do with her? Like, I can't rehome a dog like that. That's not responsible. So I was faced with either euthanizing her or, you know, full-time management, never having her around any other dogs while my son is around, which was going to be unsustainable in the long term. Like, that's not manageable when I'm a single parent and I have a baby and I'm a dog trainer. Like, it wasn't possible. So I was in a position that I'm like, I don't know what to do with her. So I was talking to my mom about it. She doesn't have any other dogs. She doesn't live around any other dogs. And my dog's 13. She doesn't really need a whole lot during the day. So my mom volunteered to take her, and she's going to live out her life there. So, and that's a good quality life for her there. She's happy. My mom is happy that she has a dog in the house again. And she knows that if I can't take her back, that the alternative, unfortunately, is euthanasia. And that's the responsible choice with the dog like that, because she can't go into just an average dog home. She can't come back here because I still have a baby, and I don't want her around. I don't want her around him with her having that unpredictable streak. And it's not necessarily even unpredictable. That's the wrong word, but she just escalates very quickly. And she didn't. Like, I've had her for 9 years, but now that she's getting older, she has zero tolerance. And what is happening in my mind is, if he's running around and he drives a toy up on her back and she's in pain, she could turn around and come after him. Even with a muzzle on, there could still be damage.
Well, yeah, it's like, if the stress overwhelms the joy of having the dog, and if you're not feeling relaxed, like, it's not a good life for you and the dog. And
no,
like, I tell people too, it's like, when clients have dogs that are just not enjoyable in their life, I say you should rehome the dog, or euthanasia. And I know it's a tough topic, which maybe I'll talk about with somebody else, but it's just, the dog, if you rehome the dog and then someone that had no idea what the dog, or messes up with that dog eventually gets put down, like, whether it's months or in a year. It's just, when you have a tough dog, they're not a good fit for most pet owners. And that's the thing with most pet owners, is like, a lot of people, like my rescue that I help out with, we have a lot of reactive dogs, or we have a lot of people that don't really get out and see people. And when they take them home, they're just like, I have so many people come into my house. Like, there was a client that said, oh yeah, my family just comes into the door. They don't even knock or like text me. And I'm just like, no, this is not going to work, because this dog needs this dog needs reassurance that no one's going to break in and kill everybody, but then, or just is not a threat. But if you don't, it also depends, like, your dog can eventually go up there where he can be around people, but it really depends on how much work and how consistent you are with those dogs. Because if the minute you let someone pet the dog and the dog's not ready for those people, then you set them back. And then if he bites someone, it's like starting all over again. So it's just really having that plan when people come over, giving that dog that clarity, that structure, that when people come over, this is what happens. And once those dogs are getting more comfortable and knowing that you're in control of the situation, and you're starting to observe and see the little signs that they can start doing a little bit more, like they can give that.
I know, baby.
You're doing
great.
Liberty. Then you can slowly have it. Like, if you're having a hard time with it, if, like, for my clients or people out there, if you're struggling with that, go ahead and contact a trainer. Don't wait for the third bite to actually call someone.
Right.
or even like the minute your dog starts showing discomfort before the bite, call a trainer, get someone to come over to the house, give you a protocol, see the layout of the house, so that they can tell you where you can have the place bed, or where you can have the dog put up before people come over, or
right.
what the trainer is seeing in that dog that you can see, and it's a red flag, or it's like your dog's uncomfortable. You really need to have all that in check before you can start having like people come over and you're I know, sir. We're gonna wrap up soon, so
he's hanging on. He's being a trooper.
I appreciate
the rescue stuff. Like, I really appreciate that you brought the rescue stuff, because this is a huge problem in almost every rescue that I have ever interacted with, is getting dogs that have issues, especially reactivity issues. Don't throw that, dude. That's a rock. You just threw this at me, so that's cool. Hey, go. Can we sit down, please? Sit down. Or play with the fireplace. I have an electric fireplace that I turned off the furnace part so he could just play with the light. Anyway. Yeah, so every rescue that I've ever worked with has an issue with pulling dogs that already have reactivity or aggression issues, and then not having the resources to help them. So they just go to foster homes, and then the fosters have issues, and then they go to it. Hey, don't throw that. Thank you. Can I have that? Thank you. Here, play with this. This is much safer. That lid can come off. Look. Oh, you're not throwing. Oh, it smells like coffee. There we go. So they go into foster homes or adoptive homes, and they have issues there, and then they're returned. And then now the rescue shuffles this dog around 3, 4, 5, 6 times. The dog never has any sense of stability, and they don't have a trainer there that's training the fosters, and then the fosters are training the new owners. Something that I experienced even in my own rescue, where I was the dog lead of a rescue for 1.5 years, where our fosters were being trained, but then not following the protocols. And then I'm getting calls that are like, my dog's just got in a fight with the foster dog. The foster dog ripped up my dog because they were home alone when I wasn't around, and then they got into a fight over a bone or something. Yep. And it's like, well, why were they not crated? Why was the dog not crated, or at least separated from your dogs when they weren't being supervised? Secondly, why are there high value rewards out with the group of dogs that are unsupervised, and a dog that you don't know very well with your own dogs? Like, it's a recipe for disaster, and it's not the foster's fault. Like, it's not their fault, because they don't understand the severity until something happens, because the rescue is not educating them. And even when they don't understand why they have to introduce the crate or introduce separation, or they're like, well, my dogs are fine in the house when I leave. Why can't I just leave the foster with my dogs? They'll be fine. Because they just don't understand all these things. And then you end up with really serious issues later on, and returns and euthanasias that are unnecessary.
Oh, honey, I agree. I am relating to that all day, every day right now, because I have, we take in problem dogs, and then we're not equipped to take them, and then when they do find, like, they're either at the rescue for a long time, or they get fostered because they're really good looking, or they think they can handle it, and then I tell them, this is not 3 weeks. It's gonna be gone. This is gonna be months of getting that dog acclimated to you, and the people that's gonna come, that's part of your life. And then next thing I know, I tell them, feel free to text me or have any questions, like after like a consult or something, or the initial thing. And then next thing I know, I see the dog back at the rescue. I'm like, what happened? It's like, oh, it didn't work out. And there's like the client I was talking about that by people, because I was trying to get ideas. It's a Bernese Mountain Dog of all dogs. And the problem is like, after he got neutered, he was like, he started to grow up a little bit, like, and there was a big change where their kids left for college. the oldest son that they have, he's from LA, but he comes visits frequently. But this dog would like hump him like as a puppy, and then like bite
all
him
from the beginning.
all the beginning. And then the problem was when he came into the house unannounced, and this dog was like 11 months old, and he already had the sense that this is my house, and he went and bit him. He bit him. This is like the fifth bite. Then the son got super paranoid, and he's this tall guy too. And I met him for like a lesson last week, and I was telling him how I control space between the door and when people come over and things like that. And like the dog was okay, but then the minute the dog moved a little bit suddenly, not even went for him, but the guy flinched. And then as soon as the guy flinched, that's when the dog was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go after you." And
yeah,
so I'm just like the fact that the dog is like he's a lot of work for this Bernese Mountain Dog. Like he won't go on walks,
thank you.
which I need to work on. Oh goodness, 5%. Okay, yeah, the dog won't go. Yeah, there's so much going on with and they're new dog owners too. So I feel like it's bad breeding for that Bernese, but that's why I wanted to talk about just in-home stuff with having guests come over, and there's some really good points that you brought up. But okay, for the sake of Heather, because her computer's at 5% and her kid probably needs a nap time, before we finish up,
we can totally do another session too if you want.
Yeah, definitely. Let's thank Heather and her son Tatum for jumping in for an interview. And Heather, thank you so much for taking the time to busy schedule to talk with me. I really appreciate it. And Heather, if you could give one tip to all the hardworking moms that are trying to work with dogs and their kids, what would that advice be?
As an action item for your dog, crate train your dog. That will help you a lot. And whatever it is that you're juggling, whether it's like trying to put your kid in the stroller and take your dog on a walk and actually be able to take your dog on a walk every day, you're doing enough. Like, it's hard. It is really hard because not only is being a parent a full-time job, but you get interrupted constantly, like what's happening this entire session. And you kind of just start to be okay with it. Like, because there's nothing you can do to change it other than get a sitter. And sometimes that's not always possible. And so even when things are not going totally perfect, it's okay. Like, be flexible and just realize that you're literally at capacity. You're doing the very best you can with the resources that you have, and just to be okay with what you're doing. That's something that he's 18 months. He just turned 1.5 years. And that's something that I'm just barely starting to learn, because when he was younger, it was really easy because all I had to do was just put him in a carrier, and then I teach my lesson while he's on my stomach or on my back or whatever. And it was like he wasn't even there. But now that he's mobile, I have to watch him and try and teach a lesson all at the same time because I don't have babysitters. Like, I don't have family to help. I don't have a lot of friends that are capable of watching him. And so he's with me all the time. And sometimes I'm late to sessions because I have to change a diaper at the last minute, or because he has a meltdown and we need to handle it. Or he falls asleep in the car or something like that. And I let people know ahead of time, like, hey, I'm a single mom. My son has to come to lessons with me. And, and I let them know, like, hey, I'm running 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late. I'm really sorry. And they're like, oh, we got kids. It's totally fine. And like, I just communicate as much as I can with them and let them know like what's going on. Sometimes my sessions go great. And then other times it's like, I feel like I didn't teach you anything because I was chasing my son around the whole time. And so I always bring a carrier, stroller, snacks, all those things to help keep it busy. And I try and find parks where there's a splash pad or a playground. and that way he can play with other kids if there's other kids there, or at least keep himself busy for 10-15 minutes while I'm teaching something. And even though I might get interrupted 5 times throughout the lesson, I'm still able to get through most of my material. Worst case scenario, I end up adding a lesson at the end as just complimentary, like, thank you for being flexible with me while I try and do both.
Awesome.
But yeah, piece of advice is be gentle with yourself. Like, we can't always be perfect all the time, and especially when you're chasing around a little one, it's not possible to be perfect all the time. So give yourself some slack.
Definitely. Let's give again, shout out to all the hardworking moms out there, especially you, Heather. You're one of the toughest moms I know out there, just because of all the things you're going through. So all the moms, give yourselves a pat on the back. You're doing really good. But again, if you're out in Salt Lake City, Utah, or if you're going to if you're in the same city that Heather's traveling to, hit up Project K9. She's really good at what she does. And again,
thanks,
if you didn't comment, or if you have any questions, feel free to message us. We'll be happy to answer whatever questions you have. So, but let's for nap time. And thank you for guys that watched, and stay tuned for the next episode or next interview. All right, guys. So have a good one. Peace.